Generation selection asymmetry describes a structural condition in which generative capacity and selective capacity do not scale through equivalent mechanisms. The central distinction is simple. Generation is not selection. Output capacity is not judgment capacity. A system may externalize generation to tools, models, automation, templates, pipelines, or other production mechanisms. It may multiply outputs across agents, prompts, channels, and iterations. Selection cannot be externalized in the same way. Selection names the function by which a system rejects, filters, prioritizes, delays, accepts, or withholds output according to consequence. It determines whether generated material may enter use, circulation, storage, or decision. A system can outsource production without ceasing to be itself. It cannot outsource judgment without dissolving the boundary that makes it a system. This asymmetry is structural, not ethical. The issue is not whether automation is good or bad. The issue is that generation and selection occupy different positions in system architecture. Generation scales horizontally. Horizontal scaling means that more output can be produced by multiplying sources, channels, nodes, agents, or variations. Selection scales vertically. Vertical scaling means that selection requires depth of discrimination. The system must distinguish relevance from noise, fluency from adequacy, availability from validity, surface from consequence, and candidate output from authorized output. When generation density increases, selection load does not disappear. It concentrates. More outputs create more candidates for attention, review, correction, rejection, storage, circulation, and accountability. Poor selection therefore compounds because generated material can move faster than correction can stabilize. This produces selection pressure inversion. Selection pressure inversion occurs when increased generative capacity reduces the relative importance of producing more and increases the structural importance of refusing, ranking, filtering, delaying, or discarding output. Under this condition, competence is no longer defined primarily by output speed or output volume. Competence is defined by rejection accuracy. Rejection accuracy means the capacity to identify which output should not move forward, even when they are coherent, fluent, available, or superficially useful. The dominant failure mode is the inability to refuse output. A system that cannot reject becomes vulnerable to its own abundance. It may preserve too much, circulate too quickly, approve too easily, or mistake output existence for output validity. Abundance does not increase intelligence, it increases selection burden. Selection is not a skill added on top of generation. Selection is an independent cognitive and structural function. Generation produces candidates. Selection determines whether those candidates may enter consequence-bearing circulation. This model is adjacent to the selection-limited system shift, but it is not the same structure. The selection-limited system shift describes the larger phase transition in which value moves from production capacity to discrimination capacity. Generation selection asymmetry describes the structural non-equivalence that makes that shift unavoidable. The model is relevant to AI-mediated environments, post-scarcity content systems, agentic workflows, automated production pipelines, institutional review chains, publishing systems, knowledge management, decision support environments, and any field in which generation becomes cheaper than selection. In AI-mediated systems, the asymmetry appears when generated outputs multiply faster than review capacity, when summaries are accepted without selection criteria, when automation increases candidate volume without increasing judgment depth, or when human review becomes a thin approval layer for machine-produced abundance. Generation selection asymmetry should not be applied to every case of automation, productivity, or output growth. The model does not claim that generation is structurally inferior to selection. It does not claim that tools cannot assist selection. The model identifies a narrower condition. Generation and selection become asymmetric when production can be multiplied outward, while consequence-bearing judgment still requires a stable, discriminating structure. The analytic question is whether the system has increased output capacity without creating a corresponding structure for rejection, prioritization, and consequence-aware selection. Naming declaration. Generation selection asymmetry originates within meta-writing ecology as a structural model for describing the non-equivalence between output production and consequence-bearing selection. Here, asymmetry does not mean opposition or ethical hierarchy. It means that generation and selection scale through different structural paths. The model is not derived from systems engineering, decision theory, or human-computer interaction research. It belongs to meta-writing ecology as an account of how generative abundance makes refusal, filtering, and judgment central to system coherence.